Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everybody. I am Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Jonny Sue is spinning on the ones and twos. And today we have a great candidate. The last candidate of Candidate Month. She is here. She is actually a Libertarian running for president from Miami. The famous now on RT for slaying Lionel. Souraya Faas is here. How are you doing, Souraya?
Hi. Good,
Hi.
thanks.
Thank you for joining the show. We're hardcore progressives here. And we really are, you know what I'm saying?
But you're a big civil liberties guy.
But I don't know if you know this, Souraya. I am a civil liberties guy. You know what I'm saying? And you're a libertarian. And that's like the foundation for libertarians, civil liberties. But when it comes to our civil liberties, how do we convince progressives like ourselves who might think that the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, just being able to take care of the most vulnerable in our society, basic human needs, basic economic needs. How do you convince people out there that has to come front and center before a Green New Deal and before Medicare for all?
Well, first of all, you have to remember that there's nothing for free, unfortunately. It always comes at an expense of somebody else. And that's a reality. It's great. Bernie Sanders can promise the whole world. And, we have a wonderful candidate who promises free ponies. And it's just wonderful. But there's nothing for free. It always comes at the expense. It comes at the expense of the hard workers, at the middle class. And that's very unfortunate. So, I do believe that we need to do something to help society, but I believe the best way we can do it is by having different programs and ways to help people to better themselves, like having more trade opportunities and giving people, showing them how to apply for jobs and how to do things like that. I think that's what's important. The root of a lot of the issues that we're having nowadays is education. That's a solution for a lot of these things.
Let me push back on that. Right now, we're at a moment where we, on the stock market, we're seeing the economy do well. This is where Donald Trump gets his praise from a lot of people that, oh, yeah, the economy's doing great. We're getting all these jobs. The problem, what we're not seeing is underneath the underbelly that people are having to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. The cost of rent is at an ever growing rate, and the wages are stagnant. Now, we can talk about minimum wage and how that can also hurt businesses, which I think it can if you don't fix everything else. But as far as, Bernie Sanders, promises a lot of free things. He doesn't really promise free things. He's working out a way to get people to pay for those things that the working class and the middle class aren't getting by making the rich pay their fair share of taxes through whether it's a wealth tax, whether it's a tax on corporations. And when it comes to discussing how we're going to pay for it, I just feel like neither the Democrats or the Republicans care about all the money we waste on war. And that's something we can agree on. Trillions of dollars are spent on war, and nobody questions it. But when it comes to actually just switching a few things around to make sure people don't die because they can't afford their insulin, it's like, oh, sorry, no, we can't pay for that. How do you propose to pay for health care or to provide a system that if it's not Medicare for all, then what is your solution to that?
I think more than anything is that the insurance companies that we have and what's going on in terms of insurance and healthcare in the United States, the insurance should be across the board in terms of state. It really shouldn't have any boundaries. We see that's what's really restricting and affecting a lot of people because they can, let's say, purchase insurance through more affordably somewhere else and not necessarily here, but it can be applied. That's a big deal. And as we've seen is that the pharmaceutical companies, it's all about money nowadays, unfortunately. Right. And it's not just has to do with the healthcare system. We see it even in religion, unfortunately, in the churches, and they're playing that out as well. And it really breaks my heart because I'm very strong when it comes to faith. And it could be because the economy is hurting. It could be because of a lot of things. But people really need to get back to the essence of just being humane and understanding, I think, is very important. And what you said about healthcare, if we were to legalize marijuana and a lot of different other, natural medicines and natural things, all those pharmaceutical companies would really not be in business for a lot of these things that they're doing. The prescriptions that they're subscribing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think the whole concept of money, this is the thing that when it comes to libertarians, and it's like the whole concept of money. What is money? Money is just something that's made up. The way it's allocated, the way it's created, whatnot. So I think that sometimes libertarians get caught in this kind of like, oh, well, it's about money. Somebody's got to pay for it. But if you understand how money is made, you might kind of change your tune, because I don't think it's about giving anything for free. I think it's just simply about reallocating our tax money to things that we collectively put in for, rather than go and bomb somebody over in another country where small people in the defense, industry make that money.
Well, the thing is that you have to remember, we're fighting wars that aren't even ours, unfortunately. I don't understand why we're even throwing billions of dollars. And then you take a look at it, and I even heard a veteran, believe it or not, praising Trump's sale of arms to Saudi Arabia. And I'm here like, this is ridiculous. He's like, oh, but you know what? He's bringing us business and he's moving the economy. That's a very bad misconception that the Republicans have, that we have to wage wars in order to help the economy. I mean, if we really have to go that low, we're really in a bad place here in America, to have to even think that way. So yes, if we do away with a lot of these federal programs, that's where we're going to be able to save the money. You can't just keep on printing money expecting, that's what's causing a lot of hurt of what everybody is facing today.
The Fed reproducing all this money. So, yeah.
So just going along those lines, I guess, of how you would work the system to favor, to better the lives of Americans. What proof do you actually have that the free market would actually govern itself? Because, I understand thinking that the government will easily be corruptible, but I think it's mostly the money and politics, the corporations that are pretty much in charge. Like, what proof do you have that that's better than having a government that is run by and for the people?
You have to remember, a lot of the small businesses mainly are hurting because of these regulations that are put in place. I mean, I even heard of, like, let's say in Rhode Island, they have to get some sort of permit to host an event every single night that they're going to host an event, let's say at a nightclub. Do you understand what I mean? Are you seriously going to be there every single day soliciting permission to host something? So why would you even allow there to be a restaurant or a nightclub in that area to begin with? Or there's a lot of issues, or they switch the regulations and the poor restaurant owners have to rearrange, their dimensions, and they have to go back and fix things just because they have a new regulation, because they want you to get a new permit for something and it has an expense. They're trying to find a way to hurt people. That's not helping the people. So if we do away with a lot of these regulations and a lot of these tariffs, and even at a international perspective as well, we would have free trade, and that would really help boost the economy, believe it or not.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with you on that. We just had a candidate here talking about how people, small businesses in particular, get
red tape.
Too much red tape. There's too many regulations they have to adhere to, and they end up going out of business. This is why my idea isn't just as something as simple as like what some Democrats want to do. They just want to raise the minimum wage. That's it. You can't just do that. You have to do other things for small businesses, give them tax cuts. You have to get rid of some of these regulations for these small businesses, make it easier for them to succeed. The problem, though, I see are these corporations that pretty much are deregulated right now. They can do whatever they want. They don't even pay taxes anymore.
Yeah.
And people like Amazon, Netflix, all of these big corporations, they pretty much influence our government. How do you stop that if you also don't want to put regulations against them? I guess is my point.
Yeah. That was going to be my question, so good.
I mean, in essence, they are providing jobs and whatnot, but it's really hurting those small business owners,
right.
And we see it every single day. So you are right. How do you regulate that? We've allowed them to become, in essence, this monster, or where they've taken up a lot of these little small companies. You can't really regulate that without like you're saying, having some sort of they have to give back to the community. They have to do something where they can help better, like, let's say, for example, encourage them to pay for the tuition of their employees, or but at the end of the day, you have to remember, the United States was founded on freedoms. Okay, so we can't really tell people what to do, in essence. And that's the same thing. You're saying you're a big civil, liberties guy. And when it comes to me as well, I'm like, let's say I'm going to touch up on abortion. I'm pro-life. I cannot force my views on others. But what I can do is I can educate somebody to the point where they can make their own conscientious decision. Do you understand what I mean?
Of course.
Of course.
So,
But corporations aren't people. So, I mean, if we want to regulate, I'm all for freedom and giving choice to people and asking them, hey, if they don't want to smoke marijuana, they don't have to. If they want to use drugs, legalize all drugs, whatever. You know. But when it comes to corporations, though, corporations aren't people. If they are a monster and we know they're a monster and they're not being regulated, they're going to continue, because the system of capitalism, for me, I guess this is the point. That this is the major disagreement that I have with libertarians, is like, this system isn't working. Capitalism is not working. I don't think socialism is the answer necessarily. I don't think any one ism or ideology is the answer. But I think we need to listen to what people are telling us and what the
demand is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we need to stop, focusing on the labels as much and try to figure out what works best, not only for our country, but also independently. States can do certain things and counties can do certain things.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's funny. I was looking for a tweet of yours and I couldn't find it. And when somebody goes, oh, a libertarian, I'm like, well, yeah, she's kind of like a modern day libertarian of sorts, because I saw you make a tweet and I can't find it now, but you talked specifically about the red tape in small businesses and stuff, which, once again, as a progressive, I don't want all these small businesses around me. If you're going to make boba and you're going to sell boba, you shouldn't have to be an accountant with a degree to figure out how you're going to pass these regulations or get this sort of permit that you need to get. But when you said those words, it seems to me like you were still concentrating on the fact that, we got to help small businesses with the red tape, but yet we got to make sure that the major corporations, the big ones, don't get out of hand and don't pollute our water, don't pollute our air, and don't frack the hell.
They're driving the small businesses out of business. That's what's happening. I mean, here in Pasadena, where we live,
we pissed her off. I knew it was going to happen.
Around 8 to 9 restaurants have closed. A lot of independent mom and pop shop places, because they can't keep up with the rising minimum wage without the tax cuts that they're not getting, because this state of California is run by neoliberals who don't care about poor people. It is not a Democrat fight versus a Republican fight here. It is a corporate Democrat versus the progressives and the independent-minded people here. And so we constantly hear, I used to work as a bartender. I constantly hear, I don't vote Democrat because they don't care about small businesses. And that is true. I feel like the Democrats haven't paid enough attention as to how to help small businesses. But that also is separate from the corporations that obviously are the ones that are being used and are paying these Democrats to shut up and continue, making them money. And I think that's something that could be addressed.
That's the same thing with journalism and what's going on now with the media. I always said the media is the fourth branch of government because it moves public opinion. Yeah. And it's because now we have these corporations and these business entities that are running, these I guess you say programs or television stations or whatnot, and they're telling them what they can and they can't do. Yeah. I feel for the journalists. I feel for the people that can no longer do investigative journalism and try to find, that's why they're saying whistleblowers. Well, guess what? Whistleblowers are what are investigative journalists, at the end of the day. They're the ones that are finding out information. That's why when I see people like you that are hosting shows and doing things, you don't have somebody telling you what you can and you cannot do to a certain extent. You understand what I mean? So people can speak freely and you can reveal more of the truth where other places you can't, and that's the reason why it's very hard for third parties, especially, us libertarians, is because we do speak the truth. There's a lot of truth in what we say, and that's not something that they want the people to hear.
Yeah.
So
why do you think last time as a third party that you guys did so much better than the Green Party?
I think the Green Party we've seen has also moved more socialist. And I feel that the people are realizing that the libertarian, what we stand and what we represent in terms of individualist, in terms of, it's the way to go. We've seen every single day that our freedoms are being restricted.
Yeah.
And I mean, beginning with freedom of speech more than anything. We've seen people being, look at Roger Stone. He can't talk freely. There's a lot of people that are being either shut out of the social media or, because they have the right things to say that people don't want to hear necessarily. They don't want people to find out about.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to. Later in the show, I want to go over the socialist part of and whatnot. Yeah. But I also don't want us to forget that we are a quasi-socialist country anyways. We have, Social Security, our roads were built, socially, a fire
Public
department, a
school.
police department, public schools, library, whatnot. And I don't think it has to be a full-blown socialist system. I think we can get whatever brand of socialist government we want, along with libertarian civil liberty views, and kind of make it our own. I mean, I don't know why social protections or social safety nets should be ignored. We can still have them and have a free market and, protect our civil liberties.
So, in 2016, I ran as an independent.
I know you
ran
did.
For that same reason, okay? Because I felt that the United States represents one of all the people in this great nation. How is it we only have two political parties?
I agree.
Two political parties that are so extreme that no matter who gets elected, nothing really changes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the people are not really being represented. And we see that, at that point, it was like, 52% of the Americans identify themselves as independent or non-party affiliates.
Yeah.
Those numbers are rising and people are seeing it more and more. I mean, we see it with the fiasco with the Democrats. People are actually embarrassed to be Democrats nowadays, and they don't necessarily want to be Republicans. The best part about the Libertarian, is that you get the best of what I guess all have to offer. Okay. And we're able to put that for people. We're very welcoming and we respect everybody's choices, and their decisions to do whatever it is that they want,
All right. We'll circle the wagons back to that one when you say that. Go ahead. Well, let's get started on a little foreign policy right now. Let's talk about Idlib, because that's your area where your family's from, whatnot. And it seems like
From
the Assad...
Aleppo.
What's that? From Aleppo, yes. And, once again, some of us who are big Tulsi Gabbard supporters, we love her. We love Dennis Kucinich because she did go to Syria to try to find the truth and did try to spread the news. Now, the Assad regime seems to be liberating most of Syria.
It's not a regime.
I'm sorry. The Assad government.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The people's elected government of Syria. They seem to be liberating most of the country. Now they're in Idlib. What now? Do you see them trying to go back and take any parts of the Golan Heights, the area where Israel is pretty much hijacked? Because I see you also share a lot of Sarah Abdallah. And Sarah talks about this all the time, that the Syrian people will liberate every single part of Syria eventually.
Oh, they will. They will.
But what about the Golan Heights? Because we got Israel in there right now.
The Golan Heights belongs to Syria, and it was already told, and it's in the United Nations doctrines. I don't see why it hasn't been applied. And that's something that isn't new, okay?
Yes.
And people seem to think that it is. No, it's that unfortunately, the United Nations doesn't have the power, as a lot of these people do. And I'm sure you guys know, because you look like you're educated enough to know that the way the international law was made, okay, it was made in such a way that the United States can police the whole world and not one single person can tell the United States, call them out on what it is that they're doing. And that's what's wrong, okay? Because we're supposed to be a big brother and sister to the others. We're really not supposed to be having enemies or even allies, okay? People don't realize the world power is not the power that you have in terms of your military might or any of that. We're really supposed to be an example to others. All these small countries, do you honestly think that these people want to come to the United States if their country is just as good?
No.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Is that the conditions, we're supposed to be helping these other nations to better themselves, to innovate themselves. And you'll see a lot of the people will tell you, we would rather stay in our country.
Oh, yeah.
But they're forced to leave because of the conditions. And a lot of these conditions, believe it or not, this administration, as past administrations, have imposed on them with these sanctions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know that Donald Trump has some emoluments in the Golan Heights that he probably wouldn't want revealed. That's why I think it's going to be a hard time to grab that away from Israel. So, yeah.
So if we actually pulled out of the Middle East, though, and cut ties with Saudi Arabia and told Israel they were on their own, what do you think would actually happen in that region?
Well, first of all, there will be no peace so long as Netanyahu is in power. So that's something that I've always said, and it's a given. That's the same thing as us having had Bolton on Trump's team. In 2016, Trump said that he was going to combat terrorism. His whole entire campaign was on that. And he wanted to drain the swamp, and he wanted to put America first. Everybody is such a delusion if they, living an illusion if they feel that he did that. Right. It's the other way around. He surrounded himself with these people. Yep. I mean, you can't please everybody. And I'm sure that's what his motive was. He probably thought that he can please everybody by putting, this person in the charge, and then that'll, help here, because the Republican Party in itself was very divided. And I can tell you, because I was a part of the Republican at one point. And I left for that very same reason, is because they're hypocrites at the end of the day. I got to see it firsthand when I ran for Congress. So there's a lot of issues that are at hand. And, those are issues that you cannot fix from one day to the next. You cannot surround yourself with your enemies and expect for things just to go away. And you can't please everybody. You have to work with everybody. There has to be a dialogue. And that's where I feel that it's different if you have a woman president, because the women are more, we're more negotiable. We can talk, and at least I can speak for myself, as an educator.
Yeah.
Well, I was able to bring in from the most liberal of the Democrats to the most conservative of the Republicans, working together hand in hand, in my campaign.
Well, I was a woman in my past life. I was definitely an Italian grandma, and I think I can negotiate some stuff, saying like that. Well, listen, we have a little video. We have one of our guys, Jimmy Dore, on with one of your guys, Ron Paul. It was on RT last week, covering for Uncle Jesse, not Uncle Jesse, Jesse Ventura. And there's a couple points I want to point out. I want you to take a look at this really quick, because the first one is about the whole libertarian kind of mindset that big business will always corrupt, versus can we get a hold of where a lot of progressives like us, we hope that we can get control of the government and make it a government for and by the people, and then regulate big business. So I want you to take a look at what Jimmy asked Ron Paul here, and then give us a little bit of your opinion and whatnot for this little clip.
So, do you know of any examples where capitalists self-regulated themselves into not poisoning the water and screwing workers for profit?
I think there's a lot of reasons, but there's no perfection in the world, and there's no perfectly clean society. But I can list more things how the government did it. I mean, look at the military, how much pollution they cause. That's horrendous. When I was a kid, I was raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we never saw the sun until noontime because of the smoke in the sky, and the rivers were a sewer. But it was big business that were allowed. They were allowed to do it. They were permitted, and there was the government sewers that went in, so they were allowed to do it, and that is made it much worse, is because they got protection. But the stuff was cleaned up in Pittsburgh by the local people saying, hey, look, the rivers belong to us, and they changed the rules a long time before EPA, and the rivers got much better. So I would say it is the power of big business that went along with government. They got government power to do this, but I think it is complex, but.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of progressives see this and whatnot, and they say, okay, listen, we rather have it take a chance and get our elected officials that we want in there and control the government properly. Whereas I think like a lot of libertarians, they want less government, less oversight. But the fact is that, they don't think that big business will corrupt itself, that it will somehow work itself out in the market. Do you want to push back and talk a little bit about this right here?
Well, I'd have to say that what we mean by having a smaller government is doing away with a lot of these different departments that they have, especially a lot of useless departments, beginning with education, for example. The education should be back to the state. If you notice, the children with all these Common Cores and all these exams, they're not learning anything anymore. All they're learning is to test, and that's what's lacking, is that they don't have the life skills that they need. They can't do just regular math without using a calculator. So those are the issues that I think are important in terms of what we mean by lessening the government, lessening the control, is that bringing it back to the state. That's what's important. I mean, the more you make it larger, the more you're going to have more people in power, the more is going to be more corruption. That's the only reason why we say that.
But at what point do we say, well, this is a good department that we need, that it's working well, and this is a bad one? Can't we just continue to go along with government, trim the fat where we need to, but just concentrate more on taking over the government ourselves as citizens, rather than just leaving it to big business to go out and play?
But see, that's what it is that we need to have people that are the politicians. Who is a politician? The politician's supposed to be of service to the people,
Right.
you know, and they've forgotten the essence of what it's supposed to be. Like, people tell me you're too nice to be in politics. But see, that's what it is. A politician back in the day was somebody that you can go to help you solve your problems, somebody who's really about and for the people. That's what sets me apart and different from others, is because I'm doing this because I care and I really want to make a difference. I'm not controlled by anybody. I'm not, you know, looking for any big corporations backing or anything. You know, it's not about the millions of dollars. You don't necessarily need millions of dollars to run a campaign. You need millions of people to believe in you. If you get millions of people to give you $1, that's worth more, at least to me as a candidate, than having a couple of corporations giving me millions of dollars, because it shows that I have the people's support. So that's how you bring it back, and that's how you take it back, is by having people in the government officials that are really about wanting to make a difference and not having any interests.
Yeah. And just like, and I agree with you on that. I just think, like, if we eliminate education from the federal level, then every state is going to have different metrics for what should be and shouldn't be. And I agree with the Common Core, and the standardized testing is bullshit, especially having gone through the public school system and seen how, you know, we're only measuring one level of intelligence. Some people don't do well when they take tests. Some people have, you know, in the United States, we have such a very archaic system of education. And that's something that I would want to tackle if I was in office. I wouldn't necessarily do away with it. I would restructure the entire thing. I mean, instead of having kids, you know, be on Ritalin and pharmaceuticals just to pay attention, I would put them outside, have them learn science in a completely different way.
More hands-on. I
Exactly.
completely agree with you. As an educator, I mean, that's how I've always been. And my students, and I've had many students throughout the years, my 20th year in education, and I've been in different levels. I even did school operations, a curriculum support specialist at Dade County. And I got to see at the different levels, because even when I was training teachers on how to use different programs, and they'd be like, well, you know, here you are giving us one more thing to do. And then you'd have to educate them. Again, the solution to everything is educating people. This is something that's going to be simpler for you, and it's going to help your students as well. Until they see it, they're not going to believe it. And it's the same thing. Like you said, there's different types of students, and every student learns differently. And it's been proven. You know, if you can't teach them by the book. Right. And a lot of the teachers, unfortunately, are there just because it's a steady income for them. And they do have 2 to 3 jobs, unfortunately, in order to maintain their family. It shouldn't have to be like that. Nobody should be in a position that they don't like just because they need the paycheck to live paycheck by paycheck.
Okay. Well, this next part right here, I put this up because I know Fiorella is a big Green New Deal person, and a lot of libertarians, they're not. And I'm not necessarily anybody's Green New Deal, but protections for our environment. I call you a modern-day libertarian because I see you kind of taking where the course of our country has gone and bringing real solutions that might not be the traditionalist libertarian way to fix things. We talked about and pointed out the red tape with small businesses and big corporations. But listen to what Ron Paul says here, and this is a quick soundbite. And then my question to you after, I'll ask real quick, and then you can follow. I'll let Fiorella ask the question, in fact. But take a look at this clip right here, because when Jimmy had on Ron, this is something that really caught my eye. Johnny, go right ahead.
A libertarian believes that you have no right to pollute or damage your neighbor's property. That means air, water, noise, whatever. You just don't have a right to do that because it's an act of aggression. But
there you go.
Okay, so if you don't believe in polluting your neighbor's air, etc., then what is your solution? I guess if it's not the Green New Deal, what can you take to regulate that if you're not for regulations? I guess I'm trying to understand how you would regulate something.
I think what he meant more than anything, or at least what I would do in this case, is raise a consciousness. Back in the days, you know, the students, even from the time that they were younger, had a consciousness, okay, to recycle. Or they had a consciousness, you know, to conserve the water and the electricity and things like that. We don't have that anymore. In fact, it's the other way around. You know, it's an I don't care, or it's a me type of society that we live in nowadays. So there's no respect, let alone, you know, for their elders, or their, you know, to have respect for anybody else's, or they're polluting anymore. So I think more than anything is raising a consciousness. And that's what's going to help. If everybody takes their own responsibility for doing that, we're going to have less of the pollution.
Yeah, but that's kind of like, just kind of throw it out there, let it happen. The Koch brothers, who were big-time libertarians, whatnot, they fracked the hell out of this whole freaking country, you know what I'm saying? And they went on fracking and fracking and fracking. And my approach has been, listen, I think a lot of libertarians feel that the progressives are, it's not that they don't necessarily believe in climate change. I think they hate the alarmistness about it. That's what libertarians always tell me. Well, you guys are being totally alarmist about the whole situation. You know what I'm saying? Could that be something? Is it the rhetoric that the progressives use, whatnot? Because no matter what, I think we can all agree, libertarian, progressive, that oil and water don't mix. And as we frack, we're putting oil in our water everywhere. But why is it let to kind of go on?
I'm with you when it comes to that 100%.
Okay.
You know, people don't realize that we're really hurting. We're hurting our environment as it is with what it is that we're doing. We are causing the pollutions. Is there really a need for it? We should be able to look for different measures and different innovations in order to have less of that. Not necessarily as like the Democratic candidates who want to do away with, you know, the cars altogether, nothing to that extreme. But it's, again, raising a consciousness that there is an issue, being able to sit with both sides and try to find a middle ground. I think at the end of the day, if we don't do that, we can sit here and argue, you know, whether it should be a new deal or it should be a blue deal or a green deal. Do you understand what I mean? It doesn't matter what you call it. I mean, we saw it with the healthcare. What have we gotten?
Yeah, but what should be the government role?
Can I
Because
say
out
something?
to Obama, and now it's what? You know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues. It's not about who came up with it or who didn't. It's a matter of sitting with everybody, trying to find a middle ground and actually finding solutions, like you said. The difference between me and others is that I guess you say I bring in a lot of common sense just because of everyday experiences. You know, I'm an average person just like anybody else.
Okay, so let me push back for a minute, though, because I feel like we do need actual solutions. And I agree with you that, you know, people are arguing to see which way it goes. Now, Democrats don't want to eliminate cars. That's not the reality. Most of these Democrats take oil money. They take fracking. They have, you know, they serve fracking lobbyists. It is people like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard who are focused on, for instance, her Off Fossil Fuels Act, which was far better than even what AOC implemented, which was the Green New Deal under her. It is a solution. It puts the economy in a way to serve the needs that are now going to happen, because you talk about middle ground. Is there time for middle ground? I'm all about science, and science is telling us we don't have time to kind of just simply wait for people's consciousness to raise. I agree that we do need to raise consciousness, that I think people are in a very me driven society. But once again, that all stems from capitalism. Like, capitalism pits you against your competitor. Capitalism.
No, don't get me wrong. I didn't mean that we're just going to wait it out and see what's going to happen and have a consciousness. No, what I mean is that everybody brings in a good idea to the table. And it's a matter of sitting down and figuring out how can we put those ideas together. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, or Libertarian. Each person, you can find something, you know, that you can agree with them on.
Sure.
So you shouldn't have to wait until a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian get in office to find those solutions. If you can start doing it from now, and you start doing it even at a local level.
Absolutely.
You know, here in Miami-Dade County, you know, our city, Miami mayor already has been, you know, nationwide talking about the innovations that he wants to do and the things that he wants to do in order to bring the city forward and to gear away from fossil fuel and whatnot. If we raise a consciousness at a local level, see, that's the difference between the libertarians. We focus more on the local level, knowing that it's from the local level that stems out everywhere else. So that's very important.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think government's role should be when it comes to regulations of, you know, environment, whatnot, but you just kind of stated it right there. So,
so you stated that there were many reasons to go after Trump, other than on impeachment, other than what they're impeaching him on. But why don't you think Democrats are going after him on particular reasons?
I kind of stated it. I don't know if you guys remember right after, is that they're in bed together.
Right.
If you really take a look at it. Okay. Trump was a Democrat before. He has a lot of relations with a lot of these people, you know. So in essence, I think Roger Stone did a great job on revealing that in a lot of his books, going from the Clinton war on women to the Bush war crime family and whatnot. If you take a look and see, they're all connected. And that's the reason why he's been silenced. The same thing with Julian Assange. You know, it's a real big deal. It's a reality. We should not be killing the messenger. And that's exactly what they're doing by not allowing them to talk right now with these gag orders. We should be looking at what it is that has been revealed as a result of that. And why aren't we going after the people themselves? The same thing with Biden. You know, Biden was at fault at the time. He was a vice presidential candidate. How come nobody's doing anything about it? Nobody's questioning it. If you notice, everything went under the carpet with Hillary Clinton's emails. Look at all that stuff that it exposed. Everything that they're doing now is deterring people away from the facts, from the findings that came into place. And unfortunately, that's what's wrong. The people need to have that consciousness again to ask those questions as to why or why not. Because you have to remember, you cannot rely just based on what you hear. You have to be able to find out and try to do your own research nowadays, unfortunately, just because the media has the same rhetoric.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're a planet of resources. And when you talk about money, to me, that means resources. That's what money equates to. Because money's just made up. I don't want to get into that argument. But why do libertarians like yourself believe that there should be billionaires could exist, essentially hoarding a lot of resources to themselves while the lower class and the poor people tend to suffer?
Do you think the billionaires were billionaires all their life? No.
The majority
Many
of
times
them were
they were
born into
average
privilege.
A lot of people, there's a lot of
came up
hand-me-down
with an
money.
idea.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it was in terms of innovation, whether it was in terms of the billionaire doesn't just become a billionaire and they don't help anybody else either. They do create jobs in essence. They do, you know, by taxing them, I do feel like you have to, first of all, we shouldn't even be taxing everybody, you know, in terms of their wages, what it is that they're gaining. Okay.
Yeah.
But to make things fair, yes, things have to be fair to a certain extent for everybody, because you cannot tax the billionaire the same amount that you tax, you know, just an average person that's a custodian at a school. Okay. Believe it or not, that custodian deserves the same respect, if not more, because people don't realize every single person connects what it is, what they do to a complete picture. Okay. So you can't just focus on the billionaire and this is what it is that he did. It's the company that he formed that provided the jobs for people. That's what people need to also think about and take into consideration.
Now, let me push back on that. The billionaires create these companies. Let's look at Jeff Bezos. He created Amazon. Nice. Amazon Prime, you get your things in 24 hours. It's all great and dandy. He wasn't paying his workers a living wage. And so my whole thing is, there has to be some sort of restriction on these billionaires. Can you be a billionaire and actually give back enough? Billionaires, you say they're self-made. No, a lot of these people aren't self-made. Kylie Jenner calls herself a self-made billionaire. She came from a very wealthy family that was already gave her the privilege of having gotten to the top and already not having to work, focusing on what she wanted to do, her makeup line. And so now we're calling that.
But my question is, do we punish that person for being rich?
Why
just
is it
because they were
punishing?
able to come? Like, I don't understand.
Isn't it doing their social civil duty? Is it really punishing?
To give back to society.
To give back. We're one planet with minimal resources.
They should voluntarily decide, what are the causes. But that goes back to raising a consciousness of these people. You know, it's not about the luxury. It's not about the materialistic. It's about giving back to the community. It's about helping those who cannot necessarily afford things. I think what we're doing nowadays is hurting our children with these commercials and these must-haves. Because I mean, when I was teaching, it was the way the schools are formed, because they have scholarships. So you have these children that don't necessarily afford a lot of these luxuries, and you have the ones who do. So what I would do is I would tell the kids, I would ask the parents, you know, to just give them simple books. You understand what I mean? Like, not to have characters. And I would teach the children, you know, it's great that you want something, but for how long are you going to use it? Because the kids get bored. We know that, right? And those parents are working so hard at times to give them an iPhone. That's a whole paycheck. Do you really need something? It's a matter of teaching a consciousness again, the need versus want.
I agree with you on that. But then you have to look at it. This is the society we've created. We've created a pro-capitalist society where you are competing against other people to reach there, and you put value into superficial things. So if we don't fix the structure, of how this society is, you're not going to get these kids to give up an iPad and choose to go outside. If that is how society deems success, owning a house, owning a car, having a business, being a billionaire, you're successful, you're creating jobs. Are you creating jobs, though, if you're not paying, if you're keeping people in poverty, people who are making you money, more money than you can even fathom to spend, and you're not giving back to society? Should billionaires exist at that point if they're not actually giving back to society? A lot of Republicans and some libertarians talk about billionaires creating jobs. Great. But are those jobs really there for the majority of the working class? Are they kind of like a crutch? Because we can talk about freedoms all day, but are we really all free when we're all so dependent on our next paycheck? And I just think, like, in order to raise that consciousness and actually have that argument, which I agree with you on, we need to actually change the structure that allows people to hoard this wealth. And I understand, like, you don't want to tell somebody, hey, what to do with your money, but there's a point where that becomes almost criminal, where you're not giving the people the incentive to go out there and create their own wealth. You're pretty much hoarding the wealth.
I'm gonna take what you said. I'm gonna give it to you in a different perspective. Take a look at what the Democrats do with all these different social programs that we have, and look at an example. If somebody is getting a check from the government, right? They're comfortable at this point, right? Why would I have to put the effort to go to work? Why would I have to put the effort if I'm given something? So there is, in essence, like you're saying, this control. The less they keep people uneducated, the more they're uneducated, the more, that's how they manipulate people. Okay. And that's when the people have to wake up and realize there's more to life than just that paycheck that you're getting.
Yeah, but if
so
they
that
can't
comes
live,
back to doing it at the local level. All
sure,
these different private institutions, whether it's the religious, whether it's those are the places where we have to help them and give them funding and give them grants so that they can work with the people individually at a local level, and not having those big government programs where they're just stealing money and getting big corporate, you know what I'm saying? Like you're saying, paychecks for nothing.
Yeah, but the poor people aren't really, I mean, the welfare thing is a thing that Republicans usually go to say, oh yeah, people are relying on welfare. But here's the thing. Yes, that happens, and I've seen it happen, and it's very unfortunate that some people just don't have the incentive. But you also can argue that the welfare queens in our society are the corporations who get away with paying $0 in taxes, and I just don't understand why people don't bring that up instead. And they often go back to the poor people that are like, they don't have any incentive because it doesn't matter. They could go work $10 an hour at McDonald's, and they would still have to sleep in their car. So how do we fix that without fixing the structure of the economy, of the government?
Well, yeah, but let me give you another example, okay? During Obama's time with the Obamacare, they were forcing the business owners to give insurance to people. So what did they do? Those big companies, and even here, the school board system, what did they do? They cut the people off from being able to work part-time during the day and working part-time in the evening, because that constituted full-time. So there's always a way to go around it. So we have to take a look and see how is it we can help the people without actually hurting them at the long run. And I told them, I said, you're supposed to have them sign a waiver saying, we don't want your insurance at this point, but let us work the hours instead of letting them go. So there's different ways to take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on acting locally. I just think people aren't going to act locally when they can't. You know, it's like psychologically, you have to like have food.
Do you know what I think it is? Okay, is that people find it hard to believe because they say, oh, the libertarians have theory, and theories haven't necessarily been put into practice or whatnot. So how do you know it's going to work? Well, guess what? If you've been trying the same thing over and over and over again, that's already proven that it's not working. So why not try something new and see how it goes?
Sure. I just think that what we're talking about, you know, I agree Democrats haven't really done the things that they said they're supposed to do. I 100% agree with that. But I see things like the Green New Deal as a way to push that aside. So let's talk about your tweet here. You said, Bernie Sanders said, our fight is not just Democrats versus Republicans. It is democracy versus oligarchy. And you said, says the socialist Bernie Sanders. What do you mean by that tweet? Because I agree with him. This was my whole point and everything. Like, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, an independent. I will talk to you. I'll sit here. I'll listen to what you have to say. But our fight is with the people who control the money, who control the presidents, the military-industrial complex, all of these people. I believe that's our fight, too. I don't care if he calls himself a democratic socialist. He's not a socialist, I'll tell you that. As an actual socialist, he's not one. He is closer to somebody in Norway.
I think what he's trying to do more than anything is gain attention, and he doesn't know how to do it.
For 40 years?
Okay. Huh?
For 40 years, he's been trying to gain attention. He's been consistent. You could find videos of him saying the same thing 40 years ago.
I'm trying to say is he's trying to appeal to people right now, whether it's the youth or whatnot. Okay. So when I was running in 2016, I would go to these, universities or whatnot and have talks, and I would tell them, I said, your families were running away from this type of government that he wants to instill here, right? Isn't that the reason why they came to the United States? Because they didn't want to have communism or socialism. And then you guys are here and you want to elect it. You can really hear a pin drop, because then the kids stop and think for a second. Wait, you know what?
That's generalizing.
That's kind of right.
Well, I'm Latin American, and I know you have you family from Venezuela. So let me push back here for a second. Those countries, let's talk about Bolivia. Bolivia is a country that had a successful socialist president that our country pushed out because he was so successful, because we don't want countries in Latin America to be successful, not only just because of the economy and the systems that they're pushing, a socialist system, but also because, hey, they happen to be brown people. Let's be real here. We go and attack people abroad, and they all happen to be brown people. We bomb people abroad. This all comes down to a competition for resources and the military-industrial complex. So to say that Bernie Sanders is representing communist Cuba or even something close to socialist is a little bit disingenuous, because...
Let me tell you, what happens is that every country is independent and has its own, issues within itself. Okay, so what might be right for one country isn't necessarily right for another.
Sure.
For example, I believe it was Chomsky, if I'm not mistaken, that said about Islam and democracy. It's the same thing. They have their own essence of democracy, within Islam. So how is it, who are we to say what is and what isn't based on what? I think it was Jeff that said, democracy is a word that was created. You have to realize we're a republic here in the United States. We're not necessarily a democracy.
We're not even that at this point.
Yeah.
Well, anymore. Yeah. But what happens is that there's a misconception. You're talking about Latin America, that these people, it's a language barrier. So when they come to the United States and they become citizens, they're not being educated as to the options of what it is they have or what the parties represent in itself. They want democracy. They automatically sign them up, the Democrats, as Democrat, telling them democracy is Democrat. People have a misconception about the Libertarians. They seem to think that the Libertarians are liberals just because it has an L in it. No, that's not what it means. So it goes back to educating people. So I really don't feel that we can dictate to others what they can and they cannot do. We should not be getting involved.
But we should also educate people. If
we're going to get involved at any level, it would be helping them balance their budget, showing them how it can be done, helping
Practical
them how
things.
to do this. I was actually meeting with somebody from Grenada the other day, and we had this conversation. They're a small island. And what's happening is that the United States seems to think that they can control these small islands. And whenever they feel like it, they'll tell them what it is they can and they can't do. The United States doesn't necessarily help them in any way. And when they had a hard time, who was there for them? He said Chavez was there for them, and they gave them the oil and they gave it to them at interest free. And that's how it helped them in that point. That doesn't mean that they're going to be communist either. There's different ways you can help others without necessarily throwing it in their face and telling them, but now you owe me a favor.
But I just don't understand how Bernie Sanders is close to being communist or how is he a communist? He's advocating pretty much FDR
He wants to be able to control what everybody is making, or he wants to be able to allocate and everybody has to pay taxes and then you're going to get this for free. I mean, it would be great to have a healthcare system that could work and serve others, okay? But we've seen, I mean, take a look at Canada. How do you think that's working for them?
It's actually working much better. I know people there. It's working much better than
I can
it
tell
is
you,
here.
I had a firsthand experience in Canada. We had carbon monoxide poisoning while I was there when I was younger. They sent an ambulance for every single person. They had to close down the whole block. And then they had to tell us that there's a hospital for the younger kids, and then there's a hospital for the older kids. My dad signed a waiver for us to go as a family to the family hospital. Okay. And then people say, okay, well, when they're going to get, let's say, an operation or they need to do something, they have to wait so long in order to get things done over there.
They wait more than maybe you do here, but they also don't have to pay thousands of dollars and be in debt or die because they're not getting there.
Or go homeless.
I mean, I mean, we can argue. Canada isn't a perfect system. I don't think anywhere is a perfect system, but I think we can do something to help save lives here, instead of letting these big pharmas and these big insurance companies.
My big concern, more than anything, is the homelessness that we have in America.
Of course,
and it's a reality. And as much as you can try to put them away, or I was in Austin, Texas, and it broke my heart to see people in tents. And we're not talking about refugees.
And a lot of those people are in tents because they can't pay their bills, though.
Take a look by the White House, around that whole area. Why do we see homeless people there? You know, or downtown, all these major areas. Why aren't we taking care of them before we think we can take care of others? Or we have to fight wars on behalf of Saudi Arabia. So that's how you really put America first. I mean, if that's a message I can give Donald Trump, that would be just that. You have to focus really on the people that you said you wanted to represent.
I think that a lot of people are homeless in this country because they can't pay their medical bills.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact. And listen, I know we can dig deeper into this, but the point I'm trying to make right here, and you said in the beginning of the show, Souraya, was that we should be respectful to other people. Now, this is one of the more kinder tweets you've had towards the senator. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's okay if you don't agree with their ideology or you think it's different. But to call him an idiot, I think this is where you've lost a lot of momentum, and a lot of people can really go in there and take Souraya serious when we kind of just really trash people or the socialist mentality. Because once again, democratic socialism isn't socialism as a whole, and every single situation is different, what they need, what not.
Socialism as a whole, okay, or any way you can sugarcoat it or you can put it, or has an end result into communism, and we've seen it.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Me that there is such a thing as a democratic socialism.
It's
you're
literally
a Democrat
existing
and you're
right
a
now.
Socialist, you can't
I mean, we'll have to disagree on that, but I can put you, look at the Netherlands. Look at Norway. Look at Greenland. Look at all these countries that are their standard of living is at a higher rate. Sure, they pay more in taxes, but it's not even about the taxes. It's about reallocating the wealth. He's not telling people you have to do it this way. He's saying you guys can all be free, but rich people have to pay their fair share. And I feel like that's not asking too much, especially at a point where you're talking about homelessness, putting America first. I'm all for that. I mean, I like somebody like Tulsi Gabbard as well, who is talking about, she's not necessarily using the class warfare rhetoric, but she's talking about how we need to put America first, get out of these wasteful regime change wars, 100%. Also focus on rebuilding our infrastructure, making sure that people can afford with her single payer plus healthcare. I mean, ultimately, people are in the streets, as Pasta said, because they can't afford their medical bills. They are working several jobs here in Los Angeles, and they still have to live in their cars. They still can't make ends meet. The rent is skyrocketing. We need some sort of regulation or an upbending on the system, social safety nets to help that. And if we don't do that, it doesn't matter how much we have to talk about. We could talk about this all day, but if people don't get these immediate solutions, which are primal, you need to eat, you need shelter, you need water, you need these basic needs before you can even look and be educated, because right now people are too busy to be educated. And so if we don't tackle those issues domestically, they're not going to be able to even pay attention to say, wow, both Democrats and Republicans are corrupt, because they're too busy trying to survive. And when you're in survival mode, you really don't care about anything else. So I just don't really see a way out of it.
No, but that's why they have a lot of wonderful programs like they do in the Catholic churches, like the St. Vincent de Paul programs, and they have the families sign up, and then they're able to help them, feed them whether it's weekly or whatnot. We need more things like that in place to help them and to provide shelter for them and things, but you can't expect it to come at the expense always of the middle class, unfortunately.
It's not the middle class. It's the rich, the very, very, I'm not even talking about millionaires. I'm talking about billionaires. Yeah, that like those people. I don't have a problem with millionaires. I think you can still become a millionaire without abusing power. But billionaires, you become a billionaire by pretty much just stepping on people. There is no way that amount of money is amassed in a very honest way.
But you know what bothers me more than anything else is when those millionaires are the ones who are trying to tell everybody else what they can do, and they're the ones that are still on the same boat. You understand what I mean? Like, how much money
to Bernie Sanders?
Does Bernie Sanders have? How much money does Warren have? And and they're constantly talking about it.
Bernie Sanders is one of the poorest senators. I mean, he just made money from his book because people buy his book. But I mean, you can't say that's the same thing as a.
Do you know what the problem is? Is when we have those politicians that are in place for so long, and we've allowed them to get corrupted. We've allowed them to make that much money, in which they become.
But he's not corrupt. He hasn't taken money from the wrong people. If you look at where Bernie Sanders gets his money from, it's legit. And he's been fighting for this. I mean,
working class.
This whole thing that he has all these beach houses and
it's 3 houses.
To talk about, or you guys defend Bernie Sanders. So, any other questions?
Well, no. I just wanted to. I just.
It's just. There's no.
It's not just him. I didn't mean, to just talk about him specifically. It just happened to be in that situation. I'm talking about everybody in general.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's that the politicians themselves are no longer working for the people. They always have a hidden agenda. They always have another reason why they're doing it. And that's what's sad. It should really be, the primary reason should be about the people.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that there are candidates out there that are putting the people first. There's several out there.
Providing actual plans and steps of action.
Yeah, they have plans detailed, etc., that are out there, and I'm thankful for those candidates.
We do have a lot of candidates that are. I'm not the only one, and I can tell you that it would be great to see that no matter who gets elected, that they can come together and really work together for the benefit of the people. I think at the end of the day, we have that common goal.
Sure.
Hopefully, you would at least hope that that's everybody's common goal.
Cool. Let's wrap up the show. The last question. Do you have on your Twitter right over here? We got to talk a little bit of Jeffrey Epstein because you're in South Florida. So let's take a look at your tweet over here. And I want to know, what does Bashar al-Assad know about Jeffrey Epstein? Play that clip.
يعني الملياردير الأمريكي جيفري إبستاين قتل منذ أسابيع وقالوا بأنه انتحر في السجن وهو قتل لأنه يحمل أسرار هامة جدا تتعلق بشخصيات هامة في المنظومة أو في النظام الأمريكي وربما في دول
No, the words are up there.
من العناصر الأساسية في الخوذ البيضاء كان في ألمانيا وقتل في السجن وقالوا بأنه انتحر. الآن يقتل المؤسس الرئيسي للخوذ البيضاء وهو ضابط وكل تاريخه عمل مع الناتو وفي أفغانستان وفي كوسوفو وفي العراق وفي لبنان والآن يؤسس الخوذ البيضاء في سوريا. ما علاقة تاريخ هذا الشخص بالعمل الإنساني الذي يفترض بأنه عمل الخوذ البيضاء ونحن وأنتم نعرف بأنهم جزء من القاعدة طبعا. أعتقد بأن هؤلاء الأشخاص مع مقتل ابن لادن مع مقتل مؤخرا البغدادي كل هؤلاء الأشخاص يقتلوا لأنهم يحملون أسرارا هامة أولا وأصبحوا عبء وانتهى دورهم.
Okay.
So give us a little bit of insight to what you think. What do these guys know? What does Bashar al-Assad? This was, when I heard this before.
It's not about what Bashar al-Assad knows. I think anybody who has a consciousness as to what's been going on and what's been revealed, those are facts. It's not like he knows something nobody else knows. The fact is that whoever is being killed because they know something. They know something that they don't want anybody else to know about.
Right.
And that's basically what he's stating. And he's naming all these different people, and those are the reasons why they were killed, because they hold secrets that they don't want anybody else to know about. So it's not, I mean, I can tell you it's not just him. There's a lot of facts. Like I was criticized over me saying the chemical attacks were fabricated.
Yeah.
It was already proven. It was proven in the United Nations at the time. The facts are there. But the problem is that you don't hear the media talking about that. I witnessed firsthand Samantha Powers walk out and a couple of others every time the facts are being presented. So I had the blessing, I guess you say, as being the first candidate to be invited to the General Assembly meeting back in 2016. And I saw it. I saw how it is that they don't take that into consideration. Yeah. So, and everybody else would just follow suit. So you can't say that you're here to bring about peace, or you're here, you know, when you're being presented with facts daily and you're just dismissing them completely. I mean, Dr. Bashara Jafari does an excellent job in the United Nations presenting those facts. So the information is there. The problem is that nobody sees it. Nobody really takes a look at it. I take the time to find out because I want to be educated, and hopefully many others will do the same from now on.
Yeah. Is Epstein dead or alive?
What do you think?
I think he's alive and kicking it, probably in Israel somewhere. Anything else, Johnny, before we get on out of here? Souraya, thank you so much for coming on over here. It's always great when we have...
Thank you for having me.
No, it's awesome. I think we need to have more of these conversations. What took place here today is really, really important because we become so polarized and so tribal that we're yelling across the aisle at each other. And the fact that you came on to talk with two progressives today, three progressives, my man over there, I tip my hat off to you. Tell everybody where they can find you and give you a few bucks if they want to.
On all social media with my first and last name, Souraya Faas. And again, I'd love to have your support, and anything, any ideas and people have, I tell you, the best thing we can do is work together to find solutions. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing right now, touring the U.S., trying to talk to everybody, as much people as I can, and to see how we can come up with solutions for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We do, Souraya. For Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
Johnny Sue on the ones and twos, Souraya Faas here.
CONVO out.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.